The message arrived before humanity had even decided whether fear was the correct response. Oliver Grant was sitting in the third row of the United Nations Emergency Assembly when every screen inside the building suddenly changed. There was no warning signal, no radio transmission, and no recognizable form of communication. One moment, officials were discussing the enormous alien vessel hanging silently above Earth. The next moment, a document appeared on every screen. It was written in perfect English. The document contained 41 pages. At the top were words that changed human history forever. Terms of accession to the Galactic Empire. Effective upon signature. Oliver was 34 years old. For 8 years, he had worked as a diplomatic liaison officer, helping nations solve disagreements, manage crises, and avoid conflicts. He understood negotiation. He understood political pressure. He understood how powerful countries spoke to weaker ones. But nothing in his training had prepared him for negotiating with an empire that ruled hundreds of worlds. The alien ship had appeared only 2 hours earlier. It had entered low Earth orbit without warning. No telescope had detected its approach. No defense system had seen it coming. One moment, space above Earth was empty. The next, the ship was simply there. It was almost 4 kilometers long. Military analysts had spent 2 hours studying every available image. They could not identify any visible weapons. Some officials found that comforting. Others found it terrifying. A civilization capable of crossing the stars might not need weapons that humans could recognize. The emergency assembly hall was packed. Ambassadors sat shoulder to shoulder. Advisors and assistants stood along the walls and filled the corridors outside. Several streets around the building had been evacuated, though the public had been told only that it was a security precaution. The truth was impossible to hide. Millions of people had already seen the ship. Its enormous shadow had crossed the water near Manhattan. 17 minutes after the document appeared, the alien representative introduced himself. His image filled the screens. He was tall and unusually pale. His face looked almost human, but not completely. His eyes were silver gray, and their movements were precise and controlled. He wore clothing that appeared to be a mixture of military uniform and ceremonial dress. He introduced himself as Emissary Varen, representative of the eternal throne of the Galactic Empire. His English was flawless. He explained that the Empire governed 612 worlds across 4-star systems. Earth, he said, had been selected to become world number 613. He described this as an honor. The process, according to him, was simple. Humanity would read the accession agreement. Humanity would sign it. Earth would become part of the Empire. Varen explained that every civilization previously contacted by the Empire had accepted within 48 hours. He spoke without arrogance or anger. That was what disturbed Oliver most. Varen did not sound like someone making a threat. He sounded like someone explaining gravity. The outcome, in his mind, was already certain. Oliver began reading the agreement. The more he read, the colder he felt. Earth's natural resources would become part of the Imperial Registry. Extraction quotas would be determined by a governor appointed by the throne. Human governments could continue handling small local matters, but all major decisions would belong to the Empire. Humans between 18 and 35 who met certain physical requirements could be forced into Imperial military service for a minimum of 8 years. Human art, music, literature, and philosophy would be preserved and studied, but future cultural production would require Imperial approval. Within 2 generations, Earth's languages would lose their position in education. Imperial Standard would become the main language taught to children. There were rules about religion, rules about science, rules about government, and rules about human reproduction. Oliver read that section 3 times. Around him, other diplomats were reaching the same conclusion. This was not an alliance. It was not cooperation. It was surrender written in polite language. The German ambassador was the first senior diplomat to place her tablet on the table. She looked directly at Varen's image. "We will need time to deliberate." Varen responded calmly. "Of course." He gave them 6 hours. Then the screens went dark. For 4 seconds, nobody spoke. After that, the entire building exploded into conversation. Oliver spent the next 6 hours moving between meeting rooms. Military officers studied the alien ship. Scientists examined its propulsion system. Economists calculated the effect of the resource quotas. Every discussion was different. But Oliver noticed one important thing. Nobody was seriously discussing signing. 6 hours later, Varen returned. This time, the Secretary General, George Hartwell, sat at the main table. Hartwell was 61 years old and had spent 3 decades in diplomacy. When he entered the room, Oliver immediately understood that the man had already made his decision. Varen asked whether Earth was ready for the signing ceremony. Hartwell answered calmly. He thanked the Empire for making contact. He acknowledged the impressive scale of imperial civilization. He expressed hope for peaceful relations. Then he said the words that no civilization had said before. Earth would not sign. Varen did not react immediately. He asked whether there was a particular section Earth wanted changed. Hartwell explained that the problem was not one section. The problem was the entire foundation of the agreement. The document did not respect human sovereignty, self-government, or cultural independence. Earth was willing to have a relationship with the Empire, but not this relationship, and not under these terms. Varen stared at him. For the first time, the alien diplomat seemed genuinely confused. He asked Hartwell to explain again. Hartwell did. Slowly, clearly, politely. Earth's answer was no. Varen said he would inform the throne. The communication ended. Oliver stood near the back wall of the hall, watching hundreds of people remain completely still. Humanity had just done something impossible. A 4-kilometer alien ship was above the planet. The civilization controlling it ruled 612 worlds. And Earth had politely refused its offer before lunch. For the next 19 days, the Empire said nothing. The alien ship remained in orbit. It did not attack. It did not leave. It simply waited. On the 20th day, another ship arrived. Then 6 escort vessels appeared with it. Varen contacted Earth again. This time, his clothing was more formal and his speech more carefully prepared. He explained that the throne had reviewed Earth's response. The Empire was willing to offer certain adjustments. Military service requirements could be modified. Some cultural protections could be strengthened. But the fundamental structure of accession could not change. George Hartwell listened. Then he gave the same answer. Equal standing was not something Earth would negotiate after joining. Equality had to exist before negotiations began. Varen's expression changed slightly. "You understand what you are refusing?" "Yes," Hartwell replied. 612 worlds. Technology. Resources. Protection. Access to 4-star systems. "Yes." "And you refuse?" "If those benefits require the surrender of our independence, yes." The communication ended. Behind the scenes, the Emperor himself received the recording. He asked whether the translation was accurate. His advisors confirmed that it was. He asked whether humanity fully understood what had been offered. Again, they confirmed that Earth understood. For the first time in centuries, the Emperor faced a problem his system had never prepared him to solve. Meanwhile, humanity was studying the Empire. A radio astronomer named Owen Clark had been monitoring communication patterns between the Imperial ships and distant stations. He could not read the messages, but he could study timing. A signal sent in one direction returned after a specific delay. Another returned more quickly. By studying thousands of transmissions, Owen began building a map. He discovered something important. The Imperial fleet was communicating with a fixed installation outside the solar system. Humanity did not know exactly what the installation was, but now humanity knew approximately where it was. At the same time, Caroline Finch, leader of Earth's new Alien Affairs Analysis team, discovered another pattern. Imperial communication traffic had increased dramatically after Earth's refusal. The Empire was discussing humanity constantly. "They're surprised," Owen said. That single sentence changed Oliver's understanding of the entire crisis. Earth had not simply rejected a treaty. Humanity had broken a process. For 612 worlds, the same system had worked. The ship arrived. The agreement was presented. The civilization accepted. The Empire moved forward. Earth had introduced something new into the system, a variable, and the Empire did not know what to do with it. More ships arrived. 4 became 6. 6 became 14. They formed patterns around Earth that military experts described as a loose blockade. Varen issued another warning. If Earth continued refusing membership, it would be classified as unaffiliated territory. Hartwell asked what that meant. Varen explained that trade, technology exchange, and diplomatic contact would require special approval. Earth would also receive none of the protections given to Imperial worlds. Hartwell asked one more question. Would an unaffiliated world have obligations to the Empire? No. Hartwell nodded. That sounds remarkably similar to the relationship we have been requesting. For several seconds, Varen said nothing. Caroline almost smiled. That is not what I meant, Varen finally said. The transmission ended. The fleet continued growing. Yet something unexpected happened on Earth. People did not collapse into panic. There were protests and arguments, of course. Some people wanted Earth to accept Imperial membership. Others demanded stronger resistance. But civilization continued functioning. Scientists worked. Engineers collaborated. Universities shared data. Amateur astronomers watched the alien ships every night. The Empire had expected humanity to stare upward in helpless fear. Instead, humanity became curious. Every telescope available was pointed toward the fleet. Every signal was recorded. Every movement was analyzed. Engineers studied propulsion signatures. Scientists calculated energy requirements. Communication specialists examined encrypted transmission patterns. They could not understand the messages, but they learned to recognize different kinds of traffic. Routine reports had one pattern. Command messages had another. Emergency signals looked different again. Humanity was building a dictionary without understanding a single word. The Empire believed it was studying Earth. It never considered that Earth was studying it back. On the 53rd day, Owen entered Oliver's office carrying a hand-drawn map. He placed it on the desk. The map showed Earth, the Imperial ships, and communication lines extending outward. At the end of those lines was a question mark. Owen pointed to it. That is where they are communicating. Oliver stared at him. You mapped an Imperial installation? Approximately. Do they know? I don't think they even know we're trying. Oliver immediately took the map to Caroline. She studied it. Then she smiled. They think we are the subject, she said. They haven't realized they are also the subject. The information reached Hartwell. He ordered the research to continue secretly. Earth would not reveal what it knew. The Empire's greatest weakness was not a weapon. It was certainty. The Imperial leadership believed humanity knew almost nothing. As long as they believed that, Earth possessed an advantage. Then another unexpected development began. Ordinary people started transmitting messages to the Imperial ships. Amateur radio operators sent greetings. Musicians sent songs. Scientists transmitted mathematical sequences. Students asked questions. People described oceans, mountains, animals, cities, families, and ordinary life. At first, there was no response. Then individual Imperial officers began answering. Quietly, unofficially. One officer spent 40 minutes asking a radio operator in New Zealand questions about the country's geography. Caroline read the transcript twice. "They're curious about us too," she said. The fleet was not a single mind. The Empire was not a single personality. Inside those ships were individuals. And some of those individuals had begun asking questions. On the 72nd day, Oliver received an unofficial message from Devon Searle, a member of the Imperial Diplomatic Auxiliary. The message contained one question. Would Earth be willing to discuss what mutual respect actually looked like? Hartwell immediately agreed. The meeting took place in a small room. No grand hall. No ceremony. Just a table and chairs. Devon arrived alone. He explained that the conversation had not been officially ordered by the throne. He was there because the current situation was not helping anyone. For 3 hours, Earth and the Empire finally spoke without scripts. Devon asked why humanity had rejected the agreement so quickly. Hartwell explained that the details mattered, but the deeper problem was the assumption behind them. The Empire had offered membership. Earth wanted connection. The Empire offered absorption. Earth wanted partnership. Devon argued that most civilizations accepted the transformation because the benefits were enormous. Hartwell responded calmly. Perhaps those civilizations do not have our relationship with self-determination. He explained that human history was filled with one repeating question. Who has the right to decide? Humanity had fought over that question for thousands of years. Humans still disagreed about the answer. But the right to continue having that argument belonged to humanity. Devon became silent. Then he revealed something unexpected. The Emperor had personally read every report about Earth. He had studied human history, culture, politics, and behavior. Earth confused him. Humanity constantly disagreed with itself, yet somehow continued producing, building, expanding, and surviving. Hundreds of nations competed and cooperated simultaneously. From the imperial perspective, the system should not work. Yet it did. Hartwell asked what the Emperor truly wanted. Devon gave an honest answer. He wants to understand you. But he only understands things that exist inside his system. Outside the Empire, Earth remains a variable. Hartwell nodded. Then he will have to learn to live with a variable. The informal talks continued. Earth prepared a 70-page proposal describing what a relationship between a sovereign Earth and the Empire could look like. Trade, scientific cooperation, cultural exchange, technology sharing, diplomatic communication, all without political submission. The imperial representatives were stunned. You produced this in 72 days? Devon asked. Yes. I have worked in diplomacy for 60 years. I have never seen anything like this. Oliver answered simply. We had a strong reason to work quickly. On the 89th day, Varen requested another official meeting. This time, his tone was different. The Eternal Throne, he announced, was prepared to discuss a relationship without precedent. 40 days later, the Emperor came to Earth. His ship landed outside the city. 12 human representatives waited for him. Nobody bowed. Nobody acted disrespectfully either. The reception was formal and calm. The Emperor walked down the ramp and studied them. You are smaller than I expected, he said. Hartwell replied, We hear that often. For the briefest moment, the Emperor looked amused. The meeting lasted 8 hours. The Emperor asked question after question. Why did humanity have so many governments? Why did humans value freedom over stability? How could a civilization survive so much internal disagreement? Why did humanity prepare for diplomacy and war simultaneously? He had reached an interesting conclusion. You do not choose one path, he said. You prepare for many paths at the same time, even when those paths contradict each other. You accept chaos because chaos gives you options. Caroline asked, Is that criticism? No, the Emperor replied. After 400 years of managing predictable systems, I find unpredictable ones interesting. 11 days later, the first draft of a new treaty was completed. It was unlike anything in imperial history. Earth would remain independent. The empire would recognize its sovereignty. Both civilizations could trade. Scientists could cooperate. Cultural exchange would remain voluntary. Neither side would control the other. On the 131st day after first contact, the treaty was signed. The emperor warned Hartwell that the agreement would create political problems inside the empire. Other worlds would ask why Earth had received different treatment. Hartwell said he understood. The emperor looked at him. And yet, here we are. Hartwell nodded. Yes, here we are. Before leaving, the emperor picked up a cup of cold coffee from the table. He drank it. Then he frowned. This is terrible coffee. Hartwell smiled slightly. The machine on this floor is old. I apologize. The emperor stared at the cup. In 400 years, I have governed 612 worlds. No one has ever apologized to me for bad coffee. He placed the cup down. It is a strange experience. Then he left. Over the following weeks, the Imperial fleet disappeared from Earth's sky. One ship at a time departed. Finally, even Varen's vessel was gone. Earth was alone again. But humanity was no longer isolated. Oliver Grant became director of the newly created Office of Interstellar Relations. His department employed hundreds of people. The emergency project started during the blockade continued. Fusion research accelerated. Asteroid exploration expanded. Space agencies began working together in ways that had once seemed politically impossible. But the greatest changes were happening inside the Empire. Other member worlds had learned about Earth's treaty. 3 requested discussions about their own agreements. They did not immediately demand independence. They simply asked questions. Questions that had never been asked before. Could cultural protections be stronger? Could military service requirements be changed? Could local governments receive more authority? Earth had not destroyed the imperial system. It had done something more subtle. It had proved that the system could move. 6 months after the treaty, Oliver traveled into imperial space. At a massive transit station, humanity met species it had never imagined. One group, translated into English as the Still People, communicated through extremely long and detailed conversations. Imperial communication systems valued speed and efficiency, so for decades the Still People had been forced to simplify themselves. Human researchers did something different. They listened. For hours. Then days. The result was an extraordinary scientific relationship. The Still People possessed knowledge that had remained underused for decades because nobody had taken the time to communicate with them in the way they naturally communicated. Earth had become useful not because it was powerful. Earth was useful because it was different. Messages began arriving from across the empire. Scientists wanted collaboration. Artists wanted cultural exchange. Ordinary citizens wanted to know about the planet that had said no. Some people simply wanted someone to listen. Earth could not solve every problem. It could not rescue everyone. But Oliver's office answered as many messages as possible. Devon visited Earth several times. During one visit, he asked Oliver a personal question. When the first ship arrived, were you afraid? Oliver thought carefully. Yes. Devon looked surprised. Oliver continued. Not the kind of fear that makes you run. The kind that makes you become very still because something important is happening and you want to understand it. Devon nodded. We noticed that. Our models predicted social collapse after first contact. Instead, the disruption was brief. Then humanity organized. We have experience with large problems, Oliver said. Yes, Devon replied. We studied your history. He looked toward the sky. The Emperor believes the Empire underestimated Earth. Oliver smiled. Is that the diplomatic version? Devon looked at him. Yes. Months later, Oliver received a private message authenticated directly by the imperial throne. The emperor wrote that the treaty was producing unexpected results. Trade was growing. Scientific cooperation was producing useful discoveries. Earth remained politically inconvenient and deeply confusing. The emperor said he had learned during his long life that the things that confused him for the longest time were often the things most worth watching. Then, at the end of the message, he added one final comment. The coffee at the imperial facility where he worked was much better than the coffee in Earth's conference room. He strongly recommended an upgrade. Oliver laughed. He printed the message and placed it on the wall above his desk. A personal message from the ruler of 612 worlds. And part of it was about coffee. That afternoon, Oliver stood beside the window. The sky was clear. Months earlier, 16 imperial ships had surrounded Earth. Now there were only clouds. The work was far from finished. Earth had new responsibilities, new relationships, new dangers, and new possibilities. Oliver thought about Hartwell saying no on the first day. He thought about Owen's hand-drawn map. He thought about Caroline studying communication patterns. He thought about scientists, engineers, students, diplomats, amateur astronomers, and billions of ordinary people who had looked upward. Humanity had not survived because it was stronger than the Empire. It had not succeeded because it possessed better technology. It succeeded because when faced with an impossible situation, humans searched for the part that was not impossible. When pressured, they organized. When threatened with losing something fundamental, they said no. Clearly, calmly, without unnecessary drama. And after saying no, they began building an alternative. The Emperor had called Earth a variable. He was correct. Humanity was unpredictable because humanity itself rarely knew exactly what it would do next. But when the moment demanded action, billions of different people could become curious, angry, creative, stubborn, and organized all at once. Oliver returned to his desk. 73 new messages were waiting. He picked up his coffee. The office had finally purchased a new machine. The Emperor had been right. The coffee was much better now. Oliver opened the first message and started reading.